This week, we dove deeper into all the things we wanted to figure out before we set off on our own. The basics were all coming together, and we were comfortable getting sails up and understanding the wind and how the boat sails. But we also covered some firsts. There were a lot of them, and some were pretty easy, like the first time getting the Code Zero out, and the first dinghy ride. But there were some more difficult firsts, like our first overnight, and a really, really tough approach for my first docking. Don't worry, I didn't hit anything.
'Cause even in the madness, there is peace, drowning out the voices all around me. Through all of this chaos, you are writing a symphony, a symphony. Oh.
We'd anchored out at Pumpkin Key the night before, and in the morning we headed out for a sail further south. It was a pretty relaxed sailing day. The winds weren't as perfect as the day before. We needed to burn some time to wait for a higher tide to get into the marina we were planning on staying at overnight. At mean tide, there's supposedly 4.5 feet, which doesn't particularly work for a boat with a 5-foot draft. Let me explain the approach. To get to this particular marina, you have to enter the channel here, and the marina is over here. But along the way, there's some narrow spots here, 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 and here. Imagine driving a Honda Civic all your life and then having to drive an 18-wheeler down a curved one-way street in downtown Boston. Go slow, be aware, and at the end, with the help of your crew, docking ends up looking pretty easy. I definitely sweat through my shirt on this one, but you gotta take on challenge after challenge with these things to get better. All right, first dock complete, Pilot House Marina. The next day, we headed out for some more sailing. Will got all of our lines and fenders put away. We had very light winds, so it was a perfect time to pull out the Code Zero and get to know it. A Code Zero sail is used for sailing in light winds that are generally coming from behind you, downwind sailing. In this case, we were getting about 5 knots out of 8 knots of wind, if I remember correctly. Eventually, we took it down, tied up to a mooring ball for a couple of hours, and had some dinner. We needed to prepare for doing our first overnight. All right, we're doing our first night passage, and we're just going for an overnight up to north of Miami, north of Fort Lauderdale. We'll just see where it goes. This is just an exercise to see how night passage works, how you manage sails, how you do it all. My shift is coming up in a minute, and we're doing 2-hour shifts. We'll see how it goes. I'll record a few things, but it might also just be really boring. There's no moon, there's nothing, so we'll see. All right, well, it is our first overnight passage. Of course, this is a passage to nowhere. We're just going from, we were through South Key Largo, and we're trying to get up, I don't know, north of Miami somewhere. We'll see where we end up in the morning. So we don't have the pressure of trying to make a time to any given place, but it's a good experiment, a good way to feel out how this is going to work, because we're going to be doing this more often. It's about 3 in the morning. I just made the turn a little bit more northerly, which is good. It was kind of uncomfortable coming up this way because the winds are east northeast, and the current is going north, and now the numbers are actually pretty interesting. It's kind of cool to actually be doing this and see how much the Gulf Stream pushes you when you're heading north. Now if you look here, we're getting 6 knots out of the wind that we've got, but we're getting 8.4 knots speed over ground. If you can see the little purple indicator right about there. It says the current is about 3 knots. We've got 14 knots of true wind and 14 knots apparent. So big difference. We're cooking, and we're only really sailing at 6 knots. So pretty neat. One thing that I learned is, man, I should have bought the big screen. So gonna buy a bigger screen and pop that in here, because this is the 9-inch, and while it works, it's not ideal. Another cool thing that I learned about was how the radar works. So if you look at the radar here, and let me just switch to the full radar screen. So on radar, if you see something that is interesting and generally in your way, and it's not showing up on AIS, which is like a transponder that some boats have, but not every boat has. You can click on something like this. Is probably a boat right here. I can touch on it and I can say acquire target and let the software do its thing, and it'll circle the target, and after it collects more data, it'll come up and show you speed over ground, and a bunch of other information about the target, so you can see if it's moving or if it's stationary. It'll even show direction vectors on the screen if it can get that data. And on this one, you can kind of see there's a little blue line pointing off of it, and that's the direction that vessel is going. So really cool, hugely useful when you're navigating at night and you don't know exactly what you're seeing there. So that's night shift. Got another hour left. We're doing 2-hour shifts, and the math works out for when it's just me, Aaron, and William to do 2-hour shifts, so that you have the same shift morning and evening. But yeah, this isn't bad. You know, I'm sure we'll encounter some uncomfortable ones along the way, but for our first one, this has turned out to be pretty great. Erin should be up in another hour and she'll take over, and then, you know, it'll be morning and we'll be done with it, and we'll move on to the next thing we want to learn about as we continue to shake out the boat. I think we've covered 250 nautical miles so far since we set out from the marina, which is good. You know, we're finding little things here and there, nothing major, and nothing critical, just little things that either need fixing or that we should have put on the boat, or things we need to add to the boat. And I'll cover some of those in a later video. Well, that's the end of our overnight. We've gone north past Dania Beach now. We're headed up to Hillsborough. We're gonna cut into the intercoastal there, go anchor somewhere, might futz around with the dinghy and get that off the boat and try her out, see how fast and wet we can get. These overnights, they're pretty tiring and kind of boring. I guess that's good though. So we'll just keep on going. We're going about 6 knots and wind's on the beam. It's just really nice, calm, pleasant conditions, and got quite a view as we're sailing by. Yeah, so overnight in the books, and hopefully one of many to come. Should have had this going when you're going through the bridge.
Three bridges.
Yeah, going through bridges.
And we don't want
Nobody's filming it.
Yeah, we didn't record yours, but we recorded
Yeah, you
yours.
should have filmed her going through the Hillsborough
You know,
Inlet Bridge,
I don't
because
like being-
that was really, really good.
That was tense.
That was a tight.
That was a
That's what I was
very,
looking at. My
very
heart
nice.
rate kept going up. That's
I'm
what
glad
I was
you were
looking
driving.
Sure.
How many bridges have you been through today?
at. 3.
3.
Which one was
Yeah.
the
Pretty
first
good.
one? Why didn't I see it?
It was the, you
That
were
was
down
the tough
there.
one.
You were down
There was
below.
a ton of current flowing through.
It
It
was
was wild.
good you weren't talking to me.
Yeah, that was a challenge.
We pulled into the Lake Santa Barbara anchorage and decided to have a meal out, so we dropped the dinghy. We bought a 380, which is pretty large, but we expect lots of family and guests on our adventures, so this is what we got. And that was really it. That's all we covered. We did some hard things, we did some easy things, and we felt pretty good at the end of it. Next up for us is to go put this into practice and make sure that Richard is confident that we remember and retain everything that he's taught us. Also, it wasn't just me and Aaron getting the teaching. William got his fair share.
Because the boat's moving away. You know, that's when time becomes of the essence.
I'm a smart kid now.
No, stay on top of it, not underneath it.
That's what she
Envision
said.
this.
So that's it. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate the views and the comments. If you haven't subscribed, of course, go do that. And we'll try to put out a new video each week. If you want more current, up-to-date info on what we're doing, go find us on Instagram under Sailing Symphony. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.